Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have on Chris. Chris is one of our coaches on the program and has his own very successful fitness business and has a very interesting background. At least I think it's interesting. Chris will probably argue that it's not, but he's very self-deprecating, as you'll find out. So talk us through your kind of employment history and how you ended up being an online coach, because you took a quite unconventional route.
Yeah. I've had about, I don't know, 3 full careers, I think.
You look it as well.
Yeah, God, it does. So, one of my clients, I took my clients out for dinner recently, and we were talking about age, and one of them said, "You're coming up to 40, Chris, aren't you?" And I said, "You're joking. I'm 32." Yeah, but it does show. I went to university. I don't come from like any crazy background, just like your normal run-of-the-mill sort of 3-bed house family. Joined the army, went to Sandhurst, commissioned as an officer, and then I served 9 years in the army in a variety of roles, which was really, really good. But for me, it wasn't a family role. And I just generally wanted to get out of that and spend time with my family and grow. That is the most important thing. Nothing worse than when you look at you get a little thing in your pay slip that says how many days out of bed you've had in your career to date. Every single pay
Days
slip.
out of bed?
Days out of bed, yeah.
What does that mean?
Basically, if you're in the field or you're overseas.
Oh, okay. So days not at home,
Days
basically.
not at home, yeah. And you get paid extra for those days, and they go up in like scales. And when you get to the sort of 700 mark, you realise that you spent 2 years of your life overseas or something like that. And
where did you go overseas? Just out of curiosity. I'm not asking this question to be fair.
So in order: France, Germany, Cyprus, Canada, Bermuda, Afghanistan. I think that's it.
Was Afghanistan after the main kind of?
It was still going on. It was obviously still very dangerous. It was an armed role. Of course, I think they all are. I don't know if any of them aren't.
I'm not sure they send you to Afghanistan without a gun, do they?
No,
realistically,
no, I don't think so.
Be a bit naive, wouldn't it? He'll be all right.
I think every base you've got a pistol. I think, but yeah. So I was in like a little forward operating base doing. It was a mentoring role. To be fair, it wasn't anything like kinetic.
What was it like though?
Hot.
Well, I can imagine.
Hot and smoky.
But like generally just like the feel of the place. I get so interested in this stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's hard. In some ways, it's really vivid. In some ways, I just don't remember it. I think you get in your bubble, you have your role. And where we were sort of out on a highway in one of those fobs that's got those sort of, you'll see them on the news, those sort of bomb barriers with all the gravel in them that kind of go really high up, and then the watchtowers, they're called sangars, where we have all the people watching out over. And we were just down. I lived in a shipping container, and because it's hard cover.
Yeah.
Had a bed in there, had air conditioning. It was quite nice. And then we go from there. Everywhere you walk around, you have to have. It's one of those things that you have to have your pistol with you all the times. And when you get home, you're walking through Tesco, and you're like, because you have this like thought, you're like, where is it? Or you wake up in the night. But we would then just jump in a some form of vehicle, whether it was a British Foxhound or an Aussie Bushmaster, or we had this thing called, it was like a battle bus. It was a armoured bus, and it would just take us 2 miles down the road to this other camp where we would meet our Afghans that we were training, and we could basically take off our body armour, take off our helmets, because we had force protection. So basically you just forget about what you're doing, and then the Aussies or the Brits, because it was a combined mission, they would just look out for you, and they would just sort of walk around, do basically your bodyguard, and you could crack on with your job and make really good relations that way. But yeah, it wasn't like we had like Taliban climbing over the hills by us and stuff like that. It was all like mortars and a couple of roadside bombs and stuff like that, and a few suicide
I love how
bombers.
That's pure casual, that.
But it is.
Shannon's laughing because she's from Belfast. She's like, yeah, I know.
She's like, yeah, it's a classic Sunday morning day.
But like, yeah, there was no like actual like one-on-one gunfighting.
Yeah.
It was just more like bombs and IEDs and the occasional mortar. Yeah.
But in some ways, it's important to say that, because I've got a lot of friends that had really, really difficult times and stuff. And if you're firing your weapon system every single day at someone that you can see, it's very different to, there's an alarm go off because there's mortars coming in. You just got to get into your little shipping container
I was going to say I can imagine, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I can't.
But
But I understand where you're coming from.
It's not that bad, really. I mean, you hear that the odd big one. We had a few suicide bombers at the gate and stuff like that. But if you're on the gate, bad luck. But we weren't. So so yeah.
I'm sure if you're on the gate.
Yeah,
you're on the gate, right?
Yeah.
That's where they're going.
Tough
If anyone's going anywhere, it'll be the front gate, I would assume.
We had one time where there was a little incursion, but other than that, it was very much, I had my phone, I had my laptop. Honestly, I didn't own a laptop back then. I had my phone, I had some food, and we had like a tiny gym, sort of this sort of size, like maybe the size of this room actually, which was pretty good as well. But then again, weird taking your pistol to a gym, sort of doing your sets with like your Glock.
People in the southwest of America would probably argue differently.
Yeah, very different. Yeah, we did have some Americans there that were crazy as well, to be fair. But Army was great, and it taught me a ton. You join as a kid and you leave a little bit older. I was sort of age 21 to 30, I think, when I left. So I left pretty much 2 years ago this week, and it just shows you a different side of life and humanity, and adversity, which is really important.
Can imagine the good and the bad, really.
Yeah, which is really, really good. There's no way I could have done it as a full career, and actually I was getting to the point where I was going to get too much responsibility for not enough money, and there's nothing exciting going on anymore. So if you want to go anywhere, you're not going to go anywhere. There's nothing going on anymore. So, because obviously Afghanistan's
I'm assuming
closed down.
people join the army thinking about the excitement, but like for me, I'm looking at that thinking that sounds like a good time to be in the army, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not. It's boring. It's like equipment checks, it's training, it's,
I guess it's preparing for something that like isn't happening.
Yeah, it's contingency operations. It's not nonsense. It's really important, but it's just hard to keep morale up and do things, and then you just end up doing work for the sake of it. The good thing is about the army is, it's one of my friends who's a Apache pilot in the army. He just said, look, the army, you're on a retainer, so don't ever think that it's a real job. It's a real job when they ask for you to do it, but other than that, you're just on a retainer. So just crack on and just enjoy it, and the flexibility you get is unbelievable. And of course, you don't take your work home with you because you can't.
Yeah.
So when you go home, you're home, which was really good. So I left the army so what are we now, 23? So July 21, I decided to go into project management. A lot of people in the army do, organised, know how to manage people, know how to, put a plan forwards. And I ended up starting to work for a private medical company as a contractor, doing project management. And then I went into operations, became head of operations for this company. That then finished. My contract sort of ran its course in about 12 months. At that point, I just set up my coaching business. I'll come on to the coaching business in a second because it started off really, really well and randomly. I didn't expect to be a coach. And then I went and worked for the NHS as a contractor as well, doing things with like pathology, blood testing, really random. And had you asked me 4 years ago, what I was going to do when I left the army, working in medical diagnostics is not something I would have thought I would have done. But it's just transferable skills.
Field.
Yeah. And I actually know quite a bit about phlebotomy now, which is quite funny. So just
a handy skill, maybe.
A handy skill, yeah, if you need to know about blood types and all that stuff. So so then as I left, the COVID was still happening, and there was lots of lockdowns, and people in the military couldn't go to camps to train. So they were taking civilians to become soldiers or join the RAF or the Navy, and they couldn't physically get them out, isolate them enough to then put them in a training area together to train. So a good friend of mine knew that I was coaching a couple of people, and I wasn't ever doing coaching for money. I wasn't doing it to build a business. I was doing it because I got asked by a couple of people and I like to help them. And yeah, they paid me like 80, 90 quid a month or something, but it didn't mean anything to me. And but I set this platform up, and this guy said, look, Chris knows his stuff, and he's done 9 years in the army. He's a really fit guy, understands what military training is all about, and he does coaching. One thing led to another, and I ended up running basic training, fitness plans for the whole of the Royal Air Force for the time of COVID. So they gave me a contract for a 6-month period initially, and everyone who was going to join the RAF, I've not been in the RAF, but it's the same stuff as the army. They
Just in
came,
the sky, right?
it's the same sort of, yeah, set in the sky, exactly. Similar.
And the Navy's the same, but in the sea.
But in the sea, yeah. So I ended up running online coaching, a group program for them, and I had to learn very quickly how to deliver a service. And so everyone who joined the RAF in 2021, 22, can't remember, 2022, came through me, and they did Ashford Fitness programming, and then they joined, and the aim was simple. They said, look, we want you to get the recruits to come in and pass their fitness test on day one, because a lot of them are coming and failing because we can't get them in to train them, and they're getting injured. We want to reduce injury, and we want them to get them to pass their first time fitness rate. And I think we got a 36% increase or something like that. So it was massive. It was huge. And then that went away because COVID went away. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to put this to bed now. I was training about 6 clients, and I was doing project management. And then about 14, 15 months ago, decided to give it a good crack, and here we are.
Why did you decide to give it a crack? What was the motivational factor there?
As a contractor, because I decided I never wanted to work for anyone else but myself again after leaving the army, I knew that contracts would be few and far between. Plenty of people are out of work for a couple of years, and I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I didn't love it. Medical diagnostics.
Just imagine it was just a skill set that someone would pay you for, and you were like,
yeah, the
money is enough for me to do this job.
Exactly, yeah. And don't get me wrong.
And it was good money as well, because I remember you telling me how much
great money. Yeah, so when I did my first contract, I was on £400 a day, and then that rose to £500 a day, plus VAT, of course. So, you do that every single day. You don't want to take leave because you're like, if I go on holiday for a week, I'm missing out on £2,500.
Yeah.
So I was really comfortable, but I thought, let's get an insurance policy in place. And I actually wrote in a notebook back then, I want to make £1,000 a month from online coaching. And I thought this would be great. Just to have it, going in.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a side hustle.
Yeah, exactly. Just to build it. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with someone who was doing photography for me that said, have you got a mentor? I went, no, I haven't got a mentor. Why would I want a mentor? I know exactly what I'm talking about. And so I started to look into it and thought, people actually do this for a living and earn more than what I'm earning now in what I would consider a really reputable job.
Yeah.
So, and I thought, if they can do it, why can't I? And it just became, I'm relatively all or nothing person. So I thought, well, let's give it a go. Let's see if it's actually possible. Mm-hmm. Let's challenge myself. And, went through that process of actually building the business with systems, because I didn't realize at the time it wasn't about your coaching ability. If you don't have the systems, you don't have the ability to fulfill clients. And if you can't fulfill clients, you can't give them your coaching knowledge. And that's what it was about for me.
It's a bit more methodical than people sometimes think when they first start.
Yeah, you don't realise. And until you wrap your head around that, you're probably not going to get very far.
What was the point when you were like, okay, this online coaching thing is serious for me? Do
you know what? I reckon about a year ago, about June or July, when I did, because when I started mentoring with you, I think I was on about 1,200 a month. And then I did 6 in June or something like that, 6 in June or July. I thought, this is pretty good. People are paying me 3 months up front. Not bad.
That's because I think we really narrowed down. You were just doing a couple of army people. It was kind of like just picking from your network, weren't it? But it was a generic program. Whereas I think then we went into again, I've said this on a few podcasts, but you have to have a certain authority with a certain audience to pull it off. And you went down that kind of high flyer route because of the project management background.
Yes.
And that's when things really started to move, because we were able to get a really good price point for things and people were buying in, right?
Yeah, and it's just grown arms and legs from there. A lot of the people that I coach now, there's 90% of them are from that military community. They're either, some are still serving, most of them have left and have gone into a role where they are, a senior consultant. I've just taken on a CEO of a guy who is a CEO of a company of 11,000 people. He lives in the Swiss Alps and he commutes to Munich. And so what I've had to do is
Did you love the Swiss Alps, or is that a tax dodge?
Well, he's Danish.
Well, it's not a tax dodge.
He's Danish. I don't know why he's there.
It's not dodging if you live there, but
it's not.
It might have played a factor in his choice to live in the Swiss Alps.
Possibly.
I wouldn't mind living in the Swiss Alps, to be fair.
It's lovely. When I have calls
I'm not
with
very
him,
good at skiing, but I bet the driving's really fucking good.
Yeah, I don't know what he drives actually, but I've got I have a one-to-one with his PA every week. So what?
This is what he needs to do. Make sure he does it. Sound. I'm on it, Chris.
She tells me what restaurants he's in that week, which hotel he's in, because that changes every week for tax reasons. And that depends on the gym he's going to be in. So I just drag and drop the right session in. And which days he's traveling, because it does change sort of a day here and there. And so he's got a Munich plan and he's got a Geneva plan. And so we just bounce between the two. And you know, that's all from my military network. And it's people who understand that there's a framework to follow. They understand that you need to sort of have a bit of a kick up the backside for it, but are willing to work, have that good foundation, I guess. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That
it is. Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, I'm quite honoured to have people like that in my client list.
And that kind of that grew really quickly, because I remember us having a conversation about the contract work that you were doing and the coaching on top of it. And I don't think I think once you found the kind of people that you really wanted to work with and found your home in it, I don't think you'd really factored in how fast it was going to grow.
No.
You ended up doing 2 very, very heavy jobs for a while.
I think I was close to mental breakdown maybe half a dozen times last summer until my contract ended in second week of October. And
I remember showing, it was another client that was like working in corporate, and she was like, I'm scared about leaving my job. She was a very similar situation to you, like 6-figure job, and 6-figure job is different to a 6-figure business slightly. Although to be fair, once you work all the tax out, it's probably about the same. But she was like, I'm scared of leaving this because I'm not sure, you know, it's a leap. And
Massive.
6-figure job is a comfy bed to get out of, to potentially try something else. And I actually showed her like I don't think I asked you permission for this, which I probably should have done.
I'll tick the box now, don't worry.
Yeah. But I showed her like your business numbers, and I said, look, this is the point where he left. And you can see it went like 6, 7, 7, 8, 7, and then you left, and then it just went boom, boom, like 3 months in a row.
Yeah. But since December, you know, I did have a bad month in November because I took 3 weeks off in Mauritius and Dubai.
Oh, poor you.
But no, so, and I didn't have staff then either, so that didn't help. But yeah, as soon as I left, it was like freeing up a massive chunk of headspace, and you don't realise that actually that fear that you have is actually holding you back. And your job will always be there. If you fail you give yourself 6 months, you give yourself 12 months even, you can go back to that 6-figure job.
If you've worked yourself up to a 6-figure job, it's clearly because you're skilled enough to be able to.
And what's the worst thing happen? You go get one that's worth 75 grand, still pretty good.
Yeah, they weren't paying you by accident, were they?
Exactly. Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know this about you, but you signed the contract for what will take you to a 7-figure business.
I hope so. Yeah. So.
Well, unless this company doesn't pay out.
Yeah. So.
Talk us through that process. What was that like?
Again, it's contacts. So it's that military network and it's authority. I won't give names because there is an NDA, but there is a big demand for corporate level health and wellbeing at the moment. I think since COVID as well, mental and physical health has dropped dramatically, and it's affecting the workforce and their ability to, you know, sick days are massive. So we've put in place a program which delivers not just random health and wellbeing that you can YouTube, and we're just piecing it together. It's a service which covers all of the headlines that they might need in a given day and a given month and 12-week period to really change and transform their lifestyle and their actual approach to how they maintain physical health and work a really demanding job. And what's really good here is the people that I'm working with and myself, you know, nearly 2 years of working in the corporate world myself, and, you know, at relatively high level, we know where the frictions are and where the pinch points are. And we understand the psychology that has to go behind. It's very psychologically driven what we're doing. And it's just about getting people up and moving and actually increasing their energy, reducing their sick days. And to do this, I'll say this, it's not that you walk in somewhere and you pitch and you get this. I've invested a lot of my money to get to this position, We gave them a free pilot. I've been on site. I've delivered multiple presentations, and
we've been going back and forward over this for literally at least a year.
It started in October, I think, when we had the first.
I was going to say it's got to be nearly 12 months.
Yeah, it's not far off. Yeah, and this has been a leap of faith in terms of my own investment, which equals thousands and thousands of pounds, especially in my staff that I employed for it, in the systems that I employed. I built a brand new app for it just to make it the perfect product, so they can go, we want that, and we did it.
Did you go with that app that we spoke about, or a different one?
I'm going to, as we scale past a certain number. So
for the customer service part.
For the customer service part, exactly that. Which is, I think that'd be brilliant. But at the moment, we can fulfil the numbers that we have. With the staff that we have for the service that they want.
Chris isn't going to say this, but there's an initial client load of 600 people being loaded onto this program, rolled out in 200 people increments over a 3-month period. So assuming that there's 100% drop off after the 12-week period, which I very much doubt would be the case.
I hope not.
It's an initial contract of 600 clients on an ongoing basis over a 12-month period, which is fucking... Considering you've been in the industry for sub 2 years, is fucking astronomical, to be honest.
I sit here with a bit of hesitation as we talk about it, just because I've not seen the cash yet. So whilst I know there's agreements in place, whilst I know there's signatures that are barely dry, and we've delivered something great that it's just absolutely surpassed expectations. It was sort of under promise, over deliver. It's a little bit. It just feels surreal.
Yeah.
It feels very surreal, because no way would I thought I would be in this position. But it's come at a cost. It's come at a massive cost,
From somebody who's built a business of a similar size previously, it will feel that way.
Yeah.
And it does.
Yeah.
And sometimes it still will. Like, it never gets normal. Especially if you come from like a modest background. You will sit there and you'll just be like, I'm assuming that you've probably had these moments when you're in Mauritius and stuff like that, where you just sit there and you're like, what the fuck is my life about?
It is bizarre. I mean, my 2-year-old son's been to 4 continents on 8 different countries, and you just think, and that's not a flex by any stretch. It's just, we just had the freedom to do this. Some of our holidays haven't been, we did a 1,200 quid trip to Chicago. It wasn't anything fancy, but we had a great time. And it's just the freedom that this industry has brought me to be able to do stuff like that, and know that I don't have a fixed paycheck of £2,200 coming in every month anymore. So you can manage your money a little bit better as well, and time.
Why then, on top of all of this, did you decide to work with FBU and help mentor and coach our clients? Because I told you no when you first asked, because you asked me. Like, I didn't ask you because the reason why was because I'd already identified that it wasn't going to be a position that the company could pay you enough for the time that you would be investing into it. I knew what you had in the pipeline with the corporate deals. I knew you had literally a 7-figure business that was about to take off. And I thought, there's no way Chris is going to be able to or want to devote the time that we need for our clients. If you're listening to this and you're not one of our clients, I'm sure Chris will agree. The work that we ask them to do is heavy. It is gold standard. Like, if you wrote down exactly what you would want somebody to get, like, they check content plans, they check over people's offers, they talk to them at minimum 3 to 4 times a week, if not more. They jump on calls with them. Like, it's a heavy workload. So when you asked, first of all, I was like, he has no fucking idea of the work that I'm going to ask him to do for this role. That's why he's asking. Secondly, I just thought there is fucking no way that these opportunities all align together. And I even said that to you, and you were like, yeah, I know, I'm aware of that, and I still want to do it. What was the thought process behind that? I
think actually it was sensible initially, sort of pushing me back a couple of months, because had I started this a few months earlier, whilst I'd come into coaching, full time, I don't think I was as prepared in my own business, which is now especially as I've taken over, so I've got my own business, especially as I've then been building the corporate stuff, it's allowed me to pull back from my own business more. And I know that that works now.
Yeah.
So it's a light hand on the tiller. And with that, I think I just felt that I wanted, there's a bit of ownership that's really, really important to me. And as I pull back from having one-to-one clients, as I pull back from being in the weeds of things, I like having ownership over something and having the ability to, I don't like to say to make a difference, but just to help and nurture, mentor. Mentoring is what I've done. I've done a lot of mentoring in my career, and actually, it's just about understanding people and giving them, having those conversations which help encourage and inspire them to do something. It's not really about money for me, and but it is. You're right. It's a tremendous amount of time and effort you have to put in, but I suppose it's more about having something to, like a passion project in many respects. I think that's where it really comes down to.
What do you think the biggest lessons that you've taken from your own business that you try and kind of impart onto other coaches now?
Remove fear. If you are in your business and you have a level of fear, and it's probably good to have some trepidation, but fear is going to be the biggest blocker to you, like caffeine is to sleep. You are not going to be able to be effective and functional in your business if you fear and worry about all the what ifs. And I used to be like that, but the reason why I managed to remove fear is because I had a safety net of money saved from a well-paying job before. So, and I think it's understandable why some coaches have that, because they're maybe not in that fortuitous position. And but as soon as you just look at your business objectively, without fear, then you can be far more efficient at making it function like a business.
I think there's a U-shaped curve on it, isn't there? Like absolutely no fear kind of leads to procrastination and laziness.
Yes.
I think there's some amount of fear that drives you.
Yeah.
And then there's some amount of fear that can paralyze you on the other end. And I think that U is different for everyone. Like I am so far to one end that like I almost put myself in situations that are astronomically hard because I know that it brings out the best in me. And it's very, very difficult for me to find a position that cripples me. In fact, I've not found it yet. Eventually I will, which is probably a problem, but I'll keep pushing until I do, because I want to know where the limit is. Some people are, and I think it's about understanding where you are on that spectrum. Some people can only handle a very little amount of fear and stress before it paralyzes them. And I think it's kind of our job to help identify where that person's kind of markers are, to not put them in a situation that paralyzes them, but also to put them in a situation that drives them. And then kind of get some help on helping people expand that curve. So it's not, because some people are really sensitive to it.
Yes.
Some people are almost blasé to it. And I think there's a good like happy medium of like having enough pressure to drive yourself forward, but not so much pressure you end up doing fuck all.
And that's it. And I think a lot of the coaches that just come into this process don't understand the importance of understanding their own business, because the lack of data that I see initially is quite scary. Like I was showing you before I was here, I was showing you my Stripe, because I said I stare at it like TV, because I'm driven by data and I'm motivated by, what does this quarter look like? What does this year to date look like? And I'm comparing it to before. And it's like that with my content now, with my like lead gen, and I've got my VA. I analyze that data because I think, what are you doing this month that's better or worse than last month? And the coaches that come in, they're almost scared of saying, I've only done 3 hours of lead gen. I've sent 33 messages out. Without tracking this, they've got nothing to go from.
Yeah.
You need to,
I think that's one of the reasons why I think that is the reason why you've been so successful though, especially with your business, because and you won't mind me saying, you're not the most natural person at social media and content.
No, definitely not.
The idea side of it, the initial creation doesn't flow to you as easily
it doesn't.
as other
I'm
people.
quite an awkward person, to be honest.
What you do very well is, and I think this is maybe why your business initially, when you came to us, you were like stuck at this certain level and then it just blew up. I think you needed time to collect that data and to try stuff and then be like, right, this is what works for me. This is what doesn't work for me. We've tried together 3 or 4 different ways of doing things. Not everything's always flown, but you've always been able to look at it and be like, okay, these are the positive things that I need to continue doing. These are the things that I need to cut away that aren't really helping.
Yeah.
And then as time's gone on, you've almost like whittled it down to the core things that you know drive the business forward, and then you just focus on them.
And that's it as well. That's a really good point, is actually just acknowledging the things that you need to cut away. Because some people get really stubborn and arrogant about, not arrogant, but just we get stuck in our ways, don't we? And you want to do things a certain way, but you're not going to grow if you don't change what you do.
But the analytical side of it, I think, is what's
hugely important.
Because you run your business very, very like, I'm not strictly, it's probably not the word, but it's really streamlined. I don't think you waste a lot of time on just like doing shit that doesn't move you forward.
Agreed.
And I think that analytical part of you is what's allowed it to grow, because, you know, maybe you're not from like a social media background. You're not a marketer. You're data driven. And I think that's what's allowed you to be like, okay, well, I tried all of this stuff. This is the stuff that really worked really well. I don't need to be brilliant at it. I just need to do lots of the good stuff that's working really well. And that's why now realistically you almost have 3 separate roles. You have the corporate deliverables, you have your one-to-one coaching, you have the mentoring through us.
Yeah.
And you're able to operate them all at a high level because you don't waste time on stuff that isn't going to make a difference.
And this is it. This is exactly it. And they all feed into each other in one way or another anyway. You know, it is like a circle, but you're absolutely right. It's about effective use of time. But I will say one of the things that I probably need to get better at is sometimes that efficiency can, you know, there's an element of having to understand the individual as well. And they might need a little bit more, a bit more of a nurture. And so 2 sentences back might be 2 sentences of absolute clear direction for them, but they might want a little bit more bookending front and back of that. So that's the only thing.
Some people need a little bit of,
they do.
Need a little bit of sprinkle on it. But again, that's potentially why we have 9 or 10 coaches and not just like 2 or 3 that deal with all the clients. Because some people need that analytical stuff. Some people need, you know, a lot of fluff around it. I prefer the least amount of communication possible of just like, tell me what I need to do. Like every time I've been mentored by someone, they always have to check up on me. They're always like, are you all right? I'm like, yeah, I'll text you when I need you.
You're like Clan of Ghosts.
Let me carry on. And they're like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, the stuff that you told me to do last time. I'm like, it's still working, so I don't need you at the minute. I'll tell you when it stops.
Yeah.
And like, I'm probably like a nightmare to actually coach because I don't want a lot of, because I'm like, I'm doing my own stuff. Like, I've asked you for help. I've got the help. Let me implement, and then I'll come back to you when there's more problems. Well, I think it depends on how you
look at it. Yeah,
I think it depends on how your nature is as a coach as well. Because some people need a lot of like real time feedback. Others are like, if I don't hear from you, I'm expecting everything to be okay. Like, and I think that again, it's about matching the right people to the right person. I think, but I'm like really glad to have you on board, and I just think a lot of people will be very, very fortunate to have that level of analytical like looks at the business.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy to be here as well. To be honest, it's good. It's great. Also, just learn about other people's businesses and you know what they.
I think it massively helps you because you look at things. You have to think outside the box a little bit because it's not just your vein of like this is the way I do things. You've got to be like, right, these are all the current options that we've got. Like, which ones are the best fit?
And it's amazing seeing how quickly some people grow their businesses as well. You know, I'm jealous when I look at some of these people. I think, God, you did that 3 times quicker than I did it myself.
You know, this week I've met the first person that's grown the business faster than I did.
Really?
Yeah, it was quite a humbling experience.
Are they on FBU?
They've signed up as a one-to-one client now.
Great.
So their goal is, you know, when people go to you like, oh, I want to make 7 figures, and I'm like, yeah, of course you do. Like, this guy's legit serious. And I was like, right, what have you been your numbers? What's leading you to believe that like this is capability? And he's like, right, well, I started 8 months ago and I've just done a 20 grand month. And I was like, you're the first person that's like beat the speed that I did it. I was like, right, these are all the pitfalls that you're going to have. Do you want some help in it? And he was like, yeah, cool, let's go.
Yeah.
So now I've got like a little...
There's so much information out there now to help business owners, but...
sometimes it's about fucking cutting, like again, like everything, like cutting down the only ones that you need to worry about. Like one of the clients, he's not a client, he's a friend that we helped over a period of like 6 months. All of us, like all the exec team kind of chipped on the business, and they went from like 40K to 100K a month. And literally the main job that we did was we installed a couple of things at the start that really worked really well and then stopped them fucking with it for like 6 months. And I spoke to him yesterday And it's like, how are you getting on? And he was like, yeah, we're doing 200 grand a month now. And I was like, have you done anything different? He's like, no, kind of just the same stuff. And it's just about finding the 2 or 3 big levers and just making sure that they stay working.
It's the same as coaching someone for fat loss.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's exactly the same, isn't it? What works for you, right? Let's keep doing that.
Yeah.
You know? So that's incredible. 200 grand a month, eh?
In a fitness offer, that's heavy.
Yeah, 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Just loads of coaches.
All of it is 1-to-1. Yeah. That was one of the things that we were really clear on, is like, do not fuck with the model, because the model works and it gets really good results.
I think a lot of people make the mistake of doing, like, launching just like a £20 program.
With no real reason.
There's
there's no thought process behind it other than like, I'll clean up some extra money.
Yeah.
And that to me is almost like settling. When you start playing moves like that, I'm like, you're getting towards the end of where you think you can take this, because that's like a last ditch effort to like kind of recoup some cash. Whereas if you had something that was working, that was growing, you wouldn't even think about it, in my opinion. But that's probably a story for another day. But where can people find you if they want to?
Street corners.
Not anymore. Not anymore. Considering you so well.
Instagram, Chris Ashford UK.
Chris Ashford UK. Not the other Chris. Not the US Chris.
Not
Ashford.
the US Chris Ashford. Yeah. Believe it, that was taken. So Chris
shame.
Ashford UK. I've got a website as well, but Ashford Fitness Consultancy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's very on brand.
Yeah, it's very on brand.
Very on brand. Yeah. So there you go. So Chris Ashford _UK, which is
just no underscore.
Oh, just Chris Ashford UK. Sorry, you got the proper one. And then Ashford Fitness Consultancy.
That's it.
.com.
I think it's .co.uk.
Type it in Google. You'll find out. Thank you very much, mate.
No, thanks very much, Steve. Really appreciate it.